The coffee shop door slammed open so hard that Julia Anderson thought the glass might shatter. And when the man stumbled through with rain dripping from his dark hair and a look of absolute defeat on his face, she knew her quiet afternoon was about to get complicated. He collapsed into the chair across from her without asking, which should have annoyed her, except she could see his hands shaking as he tried to wipe water from his eyes. The coffee shop was packed, so maybe he just needed somewhere to sit. Still, he looked like someone had just torn his world apart. "Are you okay?" Julia asked, setting down her laptop. He looked up at her with startling green eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Do you believe in second chances?" It was such a strange question from a stranger that Julia found herself answering honestly. "I think we get as many chances as we are willing to take." He laughed, but it was bitter. "I just got fired for taking a chance. Told my boss his entire business model was failing and that he needed to pivot. He told me to get out." Julia winced. "That is rough. I am Nicholas Jackson, and I just destroyed my career because I cannot keep my mouth shut when I see something wrong." He ran his fingers through his wet hair. "Sorry, I should not have sat down without asking. This place is just so crowded and I needed somewhere to think." "Julia Anderson, and it is fine, really?" She gestured to the chair. "You look like you needed to sit more than I needed the extra space." They talked for 3 hours. Nicholas told her about his job as a financial advisor at a mid-sized firm, how he had spent 2 years watching his boss make terrible decisions that would eventually bankrupt their clients. Julia told him about her work as a veterinary surgeon, about the dog she had tried to save that morning but could not, about how some days the job felt like collecting broken pieces of hearts. "I am not good at this," Nicholas said suddenly as the rain finally stopped outside. "At what?" "Talking to people, connecting. My last girlfriend said I was emotionally unavailable. Before that, I was told I worked too much. Before that, it was something else." He met her eyes. "I am not good at relationships." Julia felt something twist in her chest. "Neither am I. My ex said I cared more about animals than people. Maybe he was right. I have not been on a date in 2 years because every time I try, I just feel like I am pretending to be someone I am not. What if we learn together?" The words came out of Nicholas before he seemed to realize he was saying them. "Sorry, that was weird. I just met you." "It was weird," Julia agreed, "but also maybe the most honest thing anyone has said to me in months." They exchanged numbers. Nicholas left first and Julia sat there staring at her phone, wondering what she had just agreed to. The text came that night. "Coffee again tomorrow. I promise not to steal your table this time." She typed back, "Only if you let me buy. You are unemployed now." His response was immediate. "Deal." "But I am buying next time. I have savings." They met the next day and the day after that. On the 4th day, Nicholas showed up with a folder full of business plans. "I am starting my own firm," he announced, spreading papers across the table between their coffee cups. "If I am going to get fired for telling the truth, I might as well get paid for it." Julia looked at the numbers, the projections, the careful research. "This is really good, Nicholas." "Nick," he corrected. "My friends call me Nick. Are we friends?" He met her eyes. "I think we might be becoming something." The honesty of it made her breath catch. This was what she liked about him. No games, no pretending, just truth laid bare even when it was scary. "I have a surgery tomorrow on a German shepherd who was hit by a car," she said. "His owner cannot afford the full cost, so I am doing it at a discount. My clinic director says I am too soft, that I will never make partner if I keep giving discounts to people who cry." "Will the dog live?" "If the surgery goes well, yes." "Then your director is an idiot." Nick started gathering his papers. "Do you want to get dinner after? Real dinner, not coffee shop pastries." Julia hesitated. This felt like crossing a line from casual coffee meetups to something more intentional. "I do not know if that is a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I like you," she admitted. "And I am terrible at this. I will mess it up." Nick reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time they had touched beyond accidental brushes, and Julia felt electricity run up her arm. "I like you too, and I will also mess it up." But maybe if we both know we are going to mess it up, we can help each other when we do. The surgery the next day was brutal. 6 hours of painstaking work, putting together shattered bone and torn tissue. The German shepherd, a beautiful sable named Thor, made it through, but Julia was exhausted when she finally peeled off her gloves and scrubbed out. Her phone had 3 texts from Nick. "How did it go? I know you are probably still in surgery. Just wanted you to know I am thinking about you. I made a reservation for 8 but can move it if you need more time." She called him instead of texting back. "Thor made it. I am covered in dog hair and exhausted and probably smell like a kennel." "So you are saying yes to dinner?" Despite everything, Julia laughed. "Give me an hour to shower and I will meet you there." The restaurant was small and intimate, the kind of place where the tables were close together and the lighting was dim. Nick stood when she arrived and Julia realized he was dressed up. Not a suit, but nice jeans and a button-down shirt that brought out his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said, and the way he said it made her believe he meant it. Dinner was easy in a way Julia had not expected. They talked about everything and nothing. Nick told her about his first day trying to start his business, how he had spent 4 hours on the phone with lawyers and accountants and had felt completely overwhelmed. Julia told him about Thor's owner, a little girl named Emma who had cried tears of joy when Julia said her dog would be okay. "I want to do something good," Nick said over dessert. "My old firm, they were all about maximizing profit. But what if a financial advisory firm focused on helping people who actually needed help? Middle-class families, small business owners, people trying to build something real." "That sounds amazing," Julia said. "But does it make money?" "It can if I do it right. Lower fees, higher volume, build trust and reputation." His eyes were bright with passion. "I have been running numbers all week. It could work. Then you should do it." Just like that, Julia shrugged. "Life is too short to not do the things that make you feel alive. I see it every day in my work. People who waited too long to bring their pet in, who put off the thing they knew they should do, and then it is too late." Nick reached across the table and took her hand again. "Julia Anderson, I really like you." "I really like you too, Nicholas Jackson. I want to be honest about something," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I do not know how to do this, be in a relationship. I work too much. I get obsessed with projects. I am not good at remembering to text back, and I have a tendency to be blunt when I should probably be tactful." Julia squeezed his hand. "I get so focused on my patients that I forget to eat. I bring work stress home and then cannot talk about it. I am awkward at social events and I would rather spend Friday night with a good book than at a party." "We are a mess," Nick said. "We really are," Julia agreed. "Want to be a mess together?" She did not even have to think about it. "Yes." They left the restaurant holding hands, and when Nick walked her to her car, he kissed her. It was soft and tentative and perfect, and Julia felt like something inside her chest was unfurling for the first time in years. The next 3 months were a learning curve. Nick threw himself into starting his business with an intensity that was both inspiring and overwhelming. He worked 16-hour days, met with potential clients, filed paperwork, built a website. Julia cheered him on but also had to learn when to tell him to take a break. "You need to eat," she said one evening, showing up at his apartment with takeout. "I ate," Nick said, not looking up from his laptop. Coffee does not count as food. He looked up then, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "I am sorry. I am doing it again, or not I." Getting obsessed and shutting everything else out. Julia set down the food and walked over to him. "Yes, but I also know it is because you care so much. Just let me in, okay? Let me help." They ate together, and Nick told her about his first real client. A young couple trying to save for their first house, overwhelmed by debt and bad advice from their previous advisor. He had spent hours with them, building a realistic plan, and they had left his makeshift office in tears because someone had finally listened. "That is what it is about," Julia said. "That moment when you know you made a difference." "Like you with Thor," Nick said. "Exactly like that. But it was not all smooth. Julia had her own struggles. A colleague at the clinic started spreading rumors that she was sleeping with the director to get better shifts. It was not true, but it hurt, and she did not know how to talk about it. She pulled away for a few days, sending short texts and avoiding calls. Finally, Nick showed up at her apartment. "What did I do?" he asked when she opened the door. "Nothing. You did nothing wrong." "Then why are you shutting me out?" Julia felt tears prick her eyes. "Because I do not know how to let someone in when things are bad. I am used to handling everything alone." Nick stepped into her apartment and closed the door behind him. "That is what you said the night we met. That you were not good at relationships. But Julia, relationships mean letting someone see you when things are hard. It means trusting me enough to be vulnerable." She told him everything. About the rumors, about how it made her feel small and dirty, about how she wanted to quit but could not because she loved her job too much. Nick held her while she cried, and then he said, "What do you need from me?" That question, so simple, so perfect. "Just be here. Just believe me." "I will always believe you," he said. "And I am always here." 3 weeks later, the rumors died down when the colleague was caught falsifying medical records. Julia felt vindicated but also exhausted from the whole ordeal. Nick took her away for a weekend to a cabin in the mountains, no cell service, just them and nature. "This is nice," Julia said, sitting on the porch and watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and pinks. Nick sat beside her, pulling her close. "I was thinking about something." "That sounds dangerous," he laughed. "I am serious. These past few months learning how to be together, it has been hard but also the best thing that has ever happened to me." Julia turned to look at him. "For me too." "I love you," Nick said. "I have known it for a while, but I was scared to say it. Scared I would mess it up somehow." "I love you too," Julia whispered, "and we will mess it up, but we will fix it together." They kissed as the sun set, and Julia thought about how far they had both come from that rainy day in the coffee shop. 6 months into their relationship, Nick's business was thriving. He had 15 regular clients and had hired an assistant to help manage the workload. Julia made partner at her clinic, and the first thing she did was implement a sliding scale payment system for families who could not afford full-price veterinary care. "We are doing it," Nick said one night over dinner at their now favorite restaurant. "We are actually making it work." "Did you doubt we would?" Julia asked. "Every single day," he admitted. "But then I remember that we promised to learn together, and it gets easier." They moved in together after a year. It was Nick's idea, but Julia was the one who found the perfect apartment. 2 bedrooms so they could each have office space, a small balcony for morning coffee, and it was close to both their workplaces. "I love it," Nick said, walking through the empty rooms. "This is home." They furnished it slowly, picking pieces together, arguing good-naturedly about whether they needed a couch that expensive and whether Julia's collection of veterinary textbooks really needed an entire bookshelf. "They are important," she protested. "They are taking over the apartment," Nick countered, but he was smiling as he said it. Living together brought new challenges. Nick learned that Julia was a disaster in the kitchen and took over cooking duties. Julia learned that Nick had a habit of leaving his work scattered across every surface and implemented a strict clean desk at the end of the night policy. "We are like an old married couple," Nick joked one evening. Julia looked up from where she was curled on the couch with a book. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," Nick said softly. "It is the best thing." 2 years into their relationship, Nick came home with a strange look on his face. Julia was preparing for a complex surgery the next day, reading through case notes, but she set them aside when she saw his expression. "What happened?" "I got a call today from a venture capital firm," Nick said slowly. "They have been watching my business. They want to invest." Julia's eyes widened. "Nick, that is incredible." "It is a lot of money, Julia, like life-changing money. They see potential for scaling the business model, opening offices in multiple cities, building something really big." "But," Julia could hear the hesitation in his voice. "But it means things will change. I will be busier, there will be more pressure, and I am scared that it will affect us." Julia stood and walked over to him. "Do you want to do it?" Yes, I think I really do. Then do it, she said firmly. We have learned how to navigate hard things together. We will figure this out too. The venture capital investment transformed Nick's small firm into something much bigger. Within 6 months, he had opened 3 new offices and hired a staff of 20. The money started rolling in more than either of them had ever imagined. I think I am a millionaire, Nick said one night, staring at his bank statement. How is that even possible? Julia laughed. Because you are brilliant and you work hard and you genuinely care about helping people. This is surreal. But with the success came challenges. Nick was traveling more, meeting with investors and potential clients in other cities. Julia was working long hours at the clinic, including emergency surgeries that came in at all hours. They started to feel like ships passing in the night. It came to a head one evening when Nick came home to find Julia crying at the kitchen table. What is wrong? He asked, immediately dropping his bag and going to her. I lost a patient today, she said through tears. A cat, barely a year old. I did everything right, but sometimes it just is not enough. Nick held her, letting her cry, but then she pulled back. And you were not here. I called you 3 times, he winced. I was in meetings. I am so sorry, Julia. I know you were, and I know your work is important, but I needed you today and you were not there. You are right, Nick said quietly. I have been so focused on the business that I have let us slip. I am sorry. They talked for hours that night about expectations and needs, about how to maintain their relationship when both of their careers demanded so much. They came up with solutions. Weekly date nights that were non-negotiable. Morning coffee together before work, no phones allowed. A shared calendar so they always knew what the other had going on. I do not want to lose us, Julia said. You will never lose me, Nick promised. We are learning together, remember? 3 years into their relationship, Nick surprised Julia with a vacation to Italy. 2 weeks of just them, exploring Rome and Florence and Venice, eating incredible food and drinking wine and remembering why they had fallen in love in the first place. On their last night in Venice, Nick took her on a gondola ride. The sun was setting, turning the water to gold, and Julia felt perfectly content. I have something to ask you, Nick said, and when Julia looked at him, he was pulling a small box from his pocket. Her heart stopped. Julia Anderson, you are the most amazing person I have ever met. You are brilliant and compassionate, and you make me want to be a better man. You have taught me that relationships are not about being perfect, they are about choosing each other every single day. Will you marry me? Julia was crying, nodding before she could even get words out. Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. The ring was perfect, simple and elegant. They kissed as the gondola glided through the canals, and Julia thought about that rainy day in the coffee shop, about 2 broken people who had decided to learn how to love together. The wedding was 6 months later, small and intimate. Just close friends and family in a garden ceremony. Julia's parents walked her down the aisle, and when she reached Nick, he had tears in his eyes. You look so beautiful, he whispered, the vows they wrote themselves. Nick promised to always make time for her, to listen when she needed to talk, to be her partner in all things. Julia promised to let him in when things were hard, to support his dreams, to keep learning and growing together. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Nick kissed her like it was the first time, soft and sweet and full of promise. The reception was full of laughter and dancing. Nick's business partner gave a toast about how Nick had become a better leader since meeting Julia, how she had taught him the importance of balance. Julia's best friend from vet school talked about how Julia had been closed off for years until Nick came along and reminded her how to be open. To learning together, Nick said, raising his glass to Julia. To learning together, she echoed. They honeymooned in Japan, 2 weeks of exploring temples and gardens, eating sushi and ramen, soaking in hot springs. It was magical and romantic, and Julia loved every moment of being able to call Nick her husband. When they returned home, real life settled back in, but it was different now. Better. They had learned how to communicate, how to prioritize each other, how to build a life together. Julia got offered the position of chief veterinary surgeon at her clinic. It meant more responsibility but also more resources to implement the programs she was passionate about. Nick encouraged her to take it, even though it meant even longer hours. "You will be amazing," he said. "And I will be here to support you." His business continued to grow. By their second anniversary, Nick had offices in 10 cities and had been featured in several financial magazines as one of the top advisors for middle-class families. He stayed true to his original vision, never letting the success change his core mission. "I want to start a foundation," he told Julia one evening, "for financial literacy education in underserved communities, teaching people how to manage money, save, invest wisely." "I think that is perfect," Julia said. "Very you." They threw themselves into the foundation work together. Julia helped with planning and outreach, using her connections in the medical community to find people who could benefit. Nick developed curriculum and found teachers. Within a year, they were operating programs in 5 cities. "We make a good team," Nick said, looking at the reports of families they had helped. "The best team," Julia agreed. 4 years into their marriage, Julia started feeling sick. At first, she thought it was just stress, but when the nausea persisted, she took a pregnancy test. Positive, she stared at the little plus sign, her mind racing. They had talked about kids, but always in a vague, someday way. Was this the right time? Was she ready? When Nick came home that evening, Julia was sitting on the couch, the test in her hand. "We are going to have a baby," she said. Nick's face went through several emotions: shock, surprise, and then pure joy. "Really? Really?" He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "We are going to be parents. Are we ready for this?" Julia asked. Nick pulled back to look at her. "Probably not. But we were not ready for a relationship either, and look at us now. We will learn together just like we always do." The pregnancy was not easy. Julia had terrible morning sickness for the first 4 months, and being on her feet all day at the clinic became increasingly difficult. Nick was incredible, taking over all the household duties, making sure she ate properly, going to every doctor's appointment. "You are going to be such a good dad," Julia said one night, watching him assemble a crib. "I hope so," Nick said. "I am terrified, to be honest. Me too, but we have each other." Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in May. Natalie Rose Jackson came into the world screaming, with a full head of dark hair and her father's green eyes. Nick cried when he held her for the first time, and Julia fell in love all over again watching him with their baby. "She is perfect," Nick whispered. "She really is," Julia agreed. Parenthood was exactly as hard as everyone said it would be. Sleepless nights, constant worry, the feeling of never doing anything quite right. But it was also full of moments of pure magic. Natalie's first smile, her first laugh, the way she calmed down when Nick sang to her. They learned together, just like they had learned everything else. How to balance work and family, how to support each other through the exhaustion, how to find moments of connection even when they were both running on empty. "I do not know what I would do without you," Julia said one night after they had finally gotten Natalie to sleep. "You will never have to find out," Nick promised. By the time Natalie was 2, things had settled into a rhythm. Julia reduced her hours at the clinic, focusing more on teaching and mentoring young veterinarians. Nick promoted several people within his company to leadership positions, allowing him to step back a bit and spend more time at home. They took Natalie to the coffee shop where they had first met. She ran around between the tables, full of energy, while Nick and Julia watched over coffee. "Remember when you crashed into my table?" Julia said. Nick laughed. "I was such a mess. We both were. And now look at us. Married parents building this whole life together." Julia reached across the table and took his hand. "I am so glad you sat down without asking that day. Me too. Best decision I ever made." Natalie came running over, demanding to be picked up. Nick scooped her into his arms and she giggled, wrapping her little arms around his neck. Julia watched them together and felt her heart swell with happiness. They were not perfect. They still had fights, still struggled sometimes with balancing everything, still had moments where they felt like they were failing. But they had learned that love was not about never messing up. It was about choosing each other even when things were hard. It was about growing and changing together, about being brave enough to be vulnerable, about believing that two imperfect people could build something beautiful. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nick surprised Julia with a weekend away, just the two of them. Natalie stayed with Julia's parents, and they drove back to the mountain cabin where Nick had first told her he loved her. "I wanted to come back here," Nick said as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, "because this is where I realized that being scared of love was not a good enough reason to not try." "I was so scared back then," Julia said. "Scared that I would mess it up, that I was not capable of being in a real relationship. We were both scared, but we did it anyway." Julia leaned her head on Nick's shoulder. "I am so proud of us, of everything we have built together. I love you, Julia Jackson. More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too." They sat there as the sky turned from orange to pink to deep purple, and Julia thought about how far they had come. From two broken people in a coffee shop to this, a marriage built on honesty and trust and the willingness to keep learning, keep growing, keep choosing each other. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Nick pulled Julia close. "Do you think we should have another baby?" Julia looked up at him in surprise. "Really? I love being Natalie's dad, and I love what we have built together. I think we could do it again if you want to." Julia thought about it, about sleepless nights and chaos and the beautiful mess of a growing family. "I think I would like that." Yeah, let's do it. Let's keep building this life together." They kissed soft and sweet, and Julia felt perfectly content. They were not good at relationships, not in the beginning, but they had learned together, stumbling and falling and picking each other back up. They had built something real and lasting, something that would carry them through whatever came next. And that, Julia thought, was more valuable than being naturally good at something could ever be. Because they had worked for this, fought for this, chosen this every single day. And they would keep choosing it for all the days to come.